Creepypastas are great, but what's a horror story you have experienced? Out hiking in the Atlas Mountains near my family's farm, some guy jumped out in front of me with two huge machetes. I had the dogs with me, so just kept walking and staring at me. This was back in 2008. Some women a few years ago were killed in the same mountains by four men who used knives to stab them. In my old house, every time I changed clothes in my room I always caught a glimpse of my door opening. Whenever I turned to see if it was open I always caught it as it was closing. Whenever it closed it was almost like unreal on how fast the door swung. I would have locked the door, but my old room never had any door locks, even my bathroom door. So now in the new place I live in, I always lock my door and change in my closet. Those experiences also have me paranoid that I'm being watched whenever I'm using the bathroom or just doing random things. Half the time I catch myself looking around to see if someone is actually there. I was visiting my sister, who lived in a pretty decent part of Las Vegas at the time. She asked me if I could take out the trash while she was trying to do something else, so I was going out alone. The dumpsters weren't far from the entrance of the building, but they were in a slightly darker part of the parking lot. I lived in a super sketchy section of Philadelphia for years for school, so I'd like to think my gut is pretty good at detecting danger. It was screaming that night. I got about 10 feet from the dumpsters, Kobe'd the shit, and ran. I told my sister something was wrong out there. Didn't know what, but something. After my sister got home from work the next day, she asked me what I saw the night before. I told her I didn't see anything, just felt absolute danger. She said building management sent out a text blast asking if anyone saw anything suspicious because a woman was raped in the parking lot of the complex down the street when she was taking out trash. Apparently, a couple guys saw a dude skulking near the dumpsters in the parking of a different complex further up the street, so the cops were trying to figure out if the rapist was at my sister's complex and got scared, if everything might be connected. So I had to go talk to the cops about how I threw the trash and ran because something screamed danger. I don't know what forensics they had, but they did actually connect the three scenes, and they actually eventually caught the guy like 2 years later. Turns out dude attacked multiple women over the years by hiding at the dumpsters at night. So I don't know how close I was to being a victim that night, but I'm just very glad I listened to my gut. When I was a child I had waking nightmares with demonic entities, often the same demonic entity. It's obviously pretty horrifying waking up, or rather, thinking you have woken up, and having the strange feeling that you are being watched, then looking around the room with your eyes wide open and spotting a horrifying entity with decaying, demonic features in the room, and then having it slowly advance toward you. Often this would happen while dealing with sleep paralysis, too, so I couldn't move or scream. I also heard a loud, frightening and ghostly moaning noise in the basement of my empty house when I was a kid, which was presumably some sort of noise in a pipe, but sounded like someone in the room with me loudly moaning at me. I only ever heard it the one time, though I spent a lot of time in our basement, which housed our ping pong table and an area in which I could practice skateboard tricks on rainy days. On a different note, being lonely to the point that I could die for most of the last 6+ years is far worse than any spooky stuff. That's a different type of horror story, I guess. Also, if you fear death, the death anxiety prompted by the certainty of death can be quite bad and is maybe the worst feeling that I've ever experienced, slightly worse than the grief at the loss of a loved one, even. Also, having one's body age can be difficult, sad and frightening. I am a former inspector and have been in a lot of different situations. Because I was often the first guy in an investigation I got used to seeing weird stuff. By far the scariest is when I was on a call in a tiny town in Texas where I had to sit in complete darkness and watch a gas station suspected of illegal dealings. I was on a dirt road and saw a light about 40 yards ahead of me. I figured it was a lamppost and kept an eye on the target. As daybreak neared I began driving back to the field office to submit my findings and drove up to what I suspected was a lamppost. It turned out to be a guy holding an electric lantern wearing dark overalls and looking down at a human hand laying on the ground. I called it in and later found out that the guy had a few hands in his freezer and went to take them to the trash and dropped one. Upon realizing he dropped a severed human hand he went into shock and stood there for hours. Sorry, had a few hands in his freezer? Not me but my mom. We took a family trip to Ireland a while back. I was only a baby so I don't remember this. For context purposes, here are the people that attended: mom, dad, aunt, uncle, cousin, boy, cousin girl, grandma and grandpa. My cousin, boy, is extremely tall. So most everyone had fallen asleep one night except for my mom. She had a really bad stomach ache and couldn't fall asleep. When she got back into bed and closed her eyes, she heard something on the other side of the room. She sat up in bed and saw a dark figure in the doorway. She got nervous but soon realized it was just my cousin boy. She sleepily told him to go to bed and that she couldn't talk at the moment. In the morning she asks him what he wanted to talk about so late in the night. He told her that he fell asleep at 9 and never left his room. She got creeped out but didn't say anything because she didn't want to worry him. Later that day in the afternoon she overheard my aunt and the house owner of the place we were staying at talking to each other. They were talking about the owner's son who had passed away a few years ago. She said he looked a lot like my cousin but a bit taller. My mom's eyes grew wide and she listened in. The woman said that her son had passed away from a lawnmower accident and she was devastated. My mom suddenly realized that the man she saw in the door wasn't my cousin, it was that boy. The boy she saw in the doorway was wearing a ripped-up button-up t-shirt that my cousin didn't own, and he was making weird groaning noises when she was talking to him. I only heard this story recently as my mom didn't want to creep me out when I was younger. When I was maybe 3 or 4 years old, I woke up to my bedroom door being fully open and a black figure just standing there. It was maybe 5 feet, 2 meters, tall. It didn't even look non-human. I thought it was my dad for some reason and I started to scream "Dad!" over and over. The figure didn't even move or disappear. Since it was a long time ago I don't remember what happened afterwards, but I will never forget it. Maybe it was a dream? It felt super real though. I always felt like I wasn't alone or being watched in my family's house when I was alone or late at night. It creeped me out so much that I slept with my closet door closed, blocked by stuff, till I graduated high school. In my senior year around midnight my sister jumped off the second story of the house, her first suicide attempt. While on the phone with 911 and trying to keep her conscious until the ambulance showed up, the 911 operator had me ask her why she did it. Her response was, "It made me." Still left me up till this day, and I never sleep well in that house ever again. There was other stuff that happened there but too much to type it all over my phone. Thanks for watching.